The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin from the Wind's 12 Quarters. With a clamor of bells and set the swallows soaring, the festival of summers came to the city, Omelas, bright towered by the sea. The ringing of the boats in harbor sparkled with flags, and the streets between houses with red roofs and painted walls, between old moss-grown gardens and under avenues of trees, past great parks and public buildings, processions moved. Some were decorous, old people in long stiff robes of mauve and gray, grave masters and workmen, quiet, merry women carrying their babies and chattering as they walked. In other streets the music beat faster, a shimmering of gong and tambourine, and the people went dancing. The procession was a dance. Children dodged in and out, their high calls rising like the swallows, crossing flights over the music and the singing. All the processions wound towards the north side of the city, where the great water meadow called the green fields, boys and girls naked in the bright air, with mud-stained feet and ankles and long, lithe arms, exercised their restive horses before the race. The horses wore no gear at all, but a halter without bit. Their manes were braided with streamers of silver, gold, and green. They flared their nostrils and pranced and boasted to one another. They were vastly excited, the horses being the only animal who has adopted our ceremony as his own. Far off to the north and west the mountains stood up, half encircling Omelas on her bay. The air of morning was so clear that the snow still crowning the 18 peaks burned with white gold fire across miles of sunlit air, under the dark blue of the sky. There was just enough wind to make the banners that marked the Rheasaurus snap and flutter now and then. In the silence of the broad green meadows one could hear the music without winding throughout the city streets, farther and nearer and ever approaching. The cheerful faint sweetness of the air from time to time trembled and gathered together and broke out into the great joyous clang of the bells. Joyous! How is one to tell about joy? How describe the citizen of Omelas? They were not simple folk, you see, though they were happy, but we do not say the words of cheer much any more. All smiles have become archaic, given a description such as one tend to make certain assumptions. Given descriptions as such as this, one tends to look next for the king, mounted on a splendid stallion and surrounded by his noble knights, or perhaps in a golden litter born of great muscled slaves. But there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves. They were not barbarians. I do not know the rules and laws of their society, but I suspect they were singularly few, as they did without monarchy and slavery. So they also got on without the stock exchange, the advertisement, the secret police, and the bomb. Yet I repeat that these were not simple folk, not dulcet shepherds, not soulful savages, bland utopians. They were not less complex than us. The trouble is that we have a bad habit, encouraged by pedants and sophisticates, of considering happiness as something rather stupid. Only pain is intellectual, only evil interesting. This is the treason of the artist, a refusal to admit the banality of evil and the terrible boredom of pain. If you can't lick 'em, join 'em. If it hurts, repeat it. But to praise despair is to condemn delight. To embrace violence is to lose hold of everything else. We have almost lost hope. We can not longer describe happy men, nor make any celebration of joy. How can I tell you about the people of Omelas? They were not naive and happy children, though their children were in fact happy. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not wretched. Oh, miracle! But I wish I could describe it better. I wish I could convince you Omelas sounds in my words like a city in a fairy tale, long ago and far away, once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagined it as your own fancy bids, assuming it will rise to the occasion, for certainly I cannot suit you all. For instance, how about technology? I think that there would be no cars or helicopters in and above the streets. This follows from the fact that the people of Melis are happy people. Happiness is based on just discrimination of what is necessary, what is neither necessary nor destructive, and what is destructive. In the middle category, however, that of the unnecessary but undestructive, that of comfort, luxury, exuberance, etc. They could perfectly well have central heating, subway trains, washing machines, and all of kinds of marvelous devices, yet not yet invented here. Floating light sources, fuelness power, a cure for the common cold, or they could have none of that. It doesn't matter, as you like it. I incline to think that the people of towns and down the coast have been coming to Omelas during the last days before the festival on very fast little trains and double-deck tram, and that the train stations of Omelas is actually the handsomest building in the town, though plainer than the magnificent farmers' market. But even granted trains, I fear that Omelas so far strikes some of you as goody-goody. Smiles, bells, parades, horses, blah. If so, please add an orgy. If an orgy would help, don't hesitate. Let us not, however, have temples from which issue beautiful no priestesses already have in ecstasy and ready to copulate with any man or woman, lover or stranger, who desires union with the deep godhead of the blood. Although that was my first idea, but really it would be better not to have any temples in Omelas. At least not man temples. Religion, yes. Clergy, no. Surely the beautiful nudes can just wander about, offering themselves like divine souffles to the hungry of the needy and the rapture of the flesh. Let them themselves like join the processions. Let tambourines be struck above the copulations and the glory of desire be proclaimed upon the gongs, and a not unimportant point, let the offspring of these delightful rituals be beloved and looked after by all. One thing I know there is none of all in Omelas is skill. But what else should there be? I thought at first there was no drugs, but that is puritanical. For those who like it, the faint, instant sweetness of drugs may perfume the ways of the city. Drugs which first brings a great lightness and brilliance to the mind and limb, and then after some hours a dreamy languor. The wonderful visions at last of the very arcane and inmost secrets of the universe, as well as exciting the pleasure of sex beyond all belief. And is not a habit forming. For more modest taste, I think that ought to be beer. What else? What else belongs in the joyous city? The sense of victory, surely the celebration of courage. But as we did not without clergy, let us without soldiers. A joy built upon successful slaughter is not the right kind of joy. It will not do. It is fearful and it is trivial. A boundless and generous contentment, a magnanimous triumph, felt not against some outer enemy, but in communion with the finest and fairest in the souls of all men everywhere, and the splendor of the world's summer. This is what swells the hearts of the people of Omelas, the victory they celebrate in that of life. I do not think many of them need to take drugs. Many of the processions have reached the green fields by now. A marvelous smell of cooking goes forth, and the red and blue tents of provisioners. The faces of small children are amiably sticky, and the benign gray beard of a man and a couple of crumbs of rich pastry are entangled. The youths and girls have mounted their horses and are beginning to group around the starting line of the course. An old woman, small, fat, and laughing, and passing out flowers from a basket, and tall young men wear her flowers in their shining hair. A child of 9 or 10 sits at the edge of the crowd alone, playing on a wooden flute. People pause to listen, and they smile, but they do not speak to him, for he never ceases playing and never sees them, his dark eyes wholly wrapped in the sweet thing magic of the tune. He finishes and slowly lowers his hand holding the wooden flute, as if the little private silence were the signal. All at once a trumpet sounds from the pavilion near the starting line, imperious, melancholy, piercing. The horses rear on the slender legs, and some of them neigh in answer. Sober-faced, the young riders stroke the horse's neck and soothe them, whispering, "Quiet, quiet, there, my beauty, my hope." They begin to form in rank along the starting line. The crowds along the race course are like a field of grass and flowers in the wind. The festival of summer has begun. Do you believe? Do you accept the festival, the city, the joy? No. Then let me describe one more thing. In a basement under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of those spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light sweeps in dustily between the cracks in the board. Second hand from a cobbled webbed window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the little room, a couple of mops with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads stand near a rusty bucket. The floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 paces long and 2 wide, a mere broom closet or disused tool room. In the room a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. It looks about 6, but actually is nearly 10. It is feeble-minded. Perhaps it was born defective, or perhaps it became imbecile through fear, malnutrition, and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals as it sits hunched in the corner, farthest from the bucket and 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows the mops are still standing there. And the door is locked and nobody will come in. The door is always locked and nobody will ever come. Except that sometimes the child has no understanding of time or interval. Sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer in at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked. The eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child who has not lived in the tool room and can remember sunlight and its mother's voice sometimes speaks. I will be good, it says. Please let me out. I will be good. They never answer. The child used to scream for help at night and cry a good deal, but now it only makes a kind of whining. Eh-ha, eh-ha. And it speaks less and less often. It is so thin there are no calves to its legs. Its belly protrudes. It lives on half a bowl of cornmeal and grease a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are a mass of festered sores as it sits in its own excrement continually. They all know it is there, all the people on Melis. Some of them have come to see it. Others they are content merely to know it is there. They all know it has to be there. Some of them understand why and some do not. But they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of the city, the tenderness of the friendships and health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars and the skills of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest and the kindly weathers of the sky, depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. That is usually explained to children when they are between 8 and 12, whenever they seem capable of understanding, and most of them who have come to see the child are young people, though often an adult comes back to see the child. No matter how well the matter that has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight. They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all the explanation. They would like to do something for the child, but there is nothing they can do. If the child were brought up into the sunlight out of that vile place, if it were clean and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done in that day and hour, all prosperity and beauty and delight of Omelas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace of every life in Omelas for that single small improvement, to throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of happiness of one. That would be led to guilt within the walls indeed. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often the young people go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and faced with terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks or years, but as time goes on, they begin to realize that if the child could be released, it would not have of its freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, no real doubt, but little more. It is to degrade an imbecile to know any real joy. It has been afraid too long ever to be free of fear. Its habits are too uncouth for it to respond to humane treatment. Indeed, after so long it would probably be wretched without the walls about it to protect it, and darkness for its eyes, and its own excrement to sit in. with tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality and to accept it. It is their tears and anger, the trying of the generosity and acceptance of their helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of the splendor of their lives. Theirs is no vapid, irresponsible happiness. They know that they, like the child, are not free. Theirs is no, they know compassion. It is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of the science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that the wretched one were not there sniveling in the dark, and the other one, the flute player, could make no joyful music as the young riders lined up their beauty for the race in the sunlight of the first morning of summer. Now do you believe them? Are they not credible? But there is one more thing to tell, and this is quite incredible. At times of the adolescents, girls or boys who go see the child does not go home to weep or rage, does not in fact go home at all. Sometimes also a man or woman much older fights silent for a day or two, then leaves home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking and walk straight out the city of Omelas, through the beautiful gates. They keep walking across the farmlands of Omelas. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. At nightfall, the traveler must pass down village streets between the houses with yellow lit windows and out onto the darkness of the fields. Each alone, they go west or north. Towards the mountains they go on. They leave Omelas, they walk ahead into the darkness, and they do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It is possible that it does not exist, but seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas.